Well, thank you all for showing up to the September Lunch and Learn. My name is AJ Boyce, Agriculture Conservation Coordinator for TNC Ohio Ag Team. So today we are going to be continuing some of our conversations about using yield data to analyze the economics of your farm and how using best management practices can fit into your farm management plan. So today we have Sarah Moore, which is the Precision Ag and Conservation Specialist with Pheasants Forever, who's going to be giving a nice presentation. So I'll turn it over to Sarah and we can go ahead and get started.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me today. Let me just share my screen. Come on. Okay. All right, so as AJ said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about using data to help inform decision-making on your farm. Most equipment these days comes with GPS technology. There's a lot of different plugins that you can add to older equipment. But most of the time, where does that data end up? On a USB stick sitting in the console of your combine. So I'm going to give you a couple of different reasons why we should take that information out of the combine and put it to good use. So on average, across all farms, across the entire United States, 20% of a farm is losing money. 20% is breaking even, and only 60% of the farm is turning that total profit. So when we're looking for ways to improve our farm, we want to target that low-hanging fruit, that 20% of the farm that is losing us money. And farmers know their farms, they know where the bad spots are. So thinking about where on your farm is there hard pan? Are you having issues with flooding, erosion, waterways? Do you have trees along your field edges? If you have any of these problems, we need to remember that there are funded conservation solutions that we can use to help address these issues. So I just want to sort of take you through the process of working through a farm. The first step is to understand the operation goals. What sort of conservation issues are you having? Do we have resource concerns? What is your goal, just to increase your profit, increase your yield, and really working with the farmer to figure out what those goals are first and foremost. The next step is to connect to that data we were talking about before, and then analyze the operation. Every farmer is different. What are your management practices? What is your usual rotation? What kind of equipment do you already have on hand? And then we want to identify options and tailor it to the farmer and to the farm. It's sort of cool and also frustrating that there is no one size fits all for these solutions. So really presenting a host of options so that the landowner can choose what is going to work best for them, and then plan and implement those projects. So I'm going to run through a quick example of how we can put this into use. I'm going to use a farm over in Hardin County that is part of the Blanchard River Demo Farms, if any of you are familiar with that. This gentleman is part of the Blanchard River Demo Farms because he wants to help other farmers learn from what he is doing on his farm. So he has made it so that he has explicitly stated that I can share all of his information. So I know that's a big concern that a lot of farmers have, is protecting their data and what goes on their farm. But usually when you work with someone, that data is private, but because he is really wanting others to learn from what he's doing, he has given me free range to share all of the things we're doing on this particular farm. So when we're first getting started, if you have any sort of yield data, you can get this really pretty red-green map. But the red and green doesn't mean anything if we don't know what the break-even yield is. By break-even yield, I mean, what are the bushels per acre that we need to make in order to cover all of our input costs? To figure this out, we need to look at our economics. And if you're not the kind of person that really keeps your line-by-line budgets, a great place to start are the enterprise budgets put together by OSU. They separate them by year and by crop type, and it's an average across the entire state. They do tend to run high, but it's a great place to start if you don't have all of that written out line by line, and to work from there to tweak it to match your operation. And because this gentleman is a part of the demo farms, he does keep his line by line economic information. And so if we look here, we can see all of his input costs for his fertilizer, his seed, all of his chemical applications, as well as things like repair and maintenance, operating costs, labor, crop insurance. And this particular field, he is renting for about $200 an acre. And so that gives us our total expenses per acre at $678. And to get our break-even yield, we're going to divide it by $5 a bushel, which is what he sold his grain corn for this year, giving us 136 bushels an acre as our break-even yield. So this was our original red-green map that was just generated by the software. And if we can change this input here, we can make it so that our break-even yield, 136 bushels an acre, is right in the middle, plus or minus 5 bushels an acre at this light orange. So anything that is lighter than that, we are making money, and anything that is darker than that, we are losing money. So we can see on this field, there's a lot of dark areas. And if we want to simplify this a little bit more, we can change it again and sort of reduce this variation and just change it to our yellow is where our break even is, green we're making money, red we're losing money. So this really makes it apparent what the problem areas are on this field. And now here's the part where it's really important to work with the grower or landowner operator to understand what's going on in this field. Just looking at the data is not enough to really understand what's going on this field. For example, this red spot here over on the east side of the field, or west side of the field, sorry, was due to a tile breakage issue, and that has since been fixed. So this is no longer an area of concern. Oops, sorry about that. And this long red strip down the middle, I was thinking, oh, is that a driveway? What is this issue here? Turns out his nephew was running the combine and didn't realize until he got down to the end of the field that he forgot to turn the yield monitor on. So this red strip is also not an issue. For the sake of today, we're just going to focus on this large red block up at the top as our main resource concern. So here's where we start to link those economics to our field. If we look at the whole field, it's 31 acres, and his average yield is 149 bushels an acre, making him an average of $67 an acre. Again, this is one of his fields that is underperforming, low-hanging field, which is why he has decided to focus on this. So that's another great way, as an aside, if you're trying to figure out where to start on your fields, to start making improvements, targeting your fields that aren't doing so well. Again, that low-hanging fruit. So now if we zoom in on that northern area, we can see that nowhere in this 1.5 acre area are we making our break-even yield. Our break-even yield was 136 bushels an acre, and we can see just how low the bushels are here. So the average yield on just this 1.5 acres in the northern area is only 63 bushels an acre. And the average profit there is negative $363 an acre. So he is losing on average over $300 an acre just on this little spot. So if we were to just take out this north region and not do anything with it, it would increase the average bushels per acre to 153 versus the 149, and increase our average profit to $87 an acre instead of $67 an acre. So that's almost a $500 increase for the whole field. But again, Mother Nature is a see a void, fill a void kind of gal. So we would like to do something else with that area so that we can plant what we want there rather than Mother Nature filling it with potentially problematic weeds for the rest of our field. So what we can do is look at putting a conservation program in this area that will pay for the practice. So for example, if we were to put CRP on that 1.5 acres, the average payment for this area and this soil type is $217 an acre for that conservation practice. Compare that to losing $363 an acre to all of a sudden making $217 an acre. That is a pretty great turnaround. And so that changes our whole field. Total profit was just over $2,000. And by just switching over that 1.5 acres, it increases our whole field to $2,890 an acre. So again, when we're looking at places to make changes, these small areas can really make a big difference in terms of return on investment. Oops. So when we're considering a program, there are a couple of things to think about. One is that more permanent practices are going to pay more money, and more productive soils are also going to pay more money. But we don't want to try and force a program onto the acres. We need to find what fits not only for the soil types and the environment there, but also for the management practices and operation goals of that farmer and grower. Because if we try and just put a program on there because it has big dollar signs in front of it, and it doesn't quite fit, the landowner, you're not going to be happy with it. You're going to run into things and say, why do I have to do this? It's just finding what fits with the goal of increasing our return on investment is really the way to get the best outcome. Now, this whole time, we've been talking about using yield data, and that is fantastic. And of course, the more detailed the data you have, the more detailed we can be with our planning, but that is not necessary to make informed decisions on your farm and be able to sort of dive deeper and find these problem areas. There are a lot of great options for getting data on your field that are free to use just by searching around online. For example, NDVI maps. So NDVI maps are things that show the greenness, the growth and productivity on your fields on any given day. So targeting these NDVI maps for when your crop is supposed to be its most productive, for example, in corn, when it's starting to tassel out, can show the overall health of the field and help you target the areas that aren't doing as well without having to rely on a yield map. And overlapping these with publicly available soil maps and topographic maps can help you get a really good idea of what's going on in that area. And that is the presentation that I had put together, and I would love to take any questions that people have.
There is a question in the chat from Rachel. If anyone wants to ask a question, go ahead and go off mute, but I'll just read her since she wrote it down. Which is, how are you working to get more farmers to do this simple switch from farming that land to conservation?
Great question. And really, the economics is the biggest thing. So the farmers that I work with are the ones that are not necessarily the ones that are walking themselves into a soil and water district office, an NRCS office saying, hey, I'm interested in programs, what can I do? I am working with the farmers that are very much business minded and need to be shown that making the change is going to be economically profitable. So running those numbers for them, I think a lot of times farmers, like I said, they know where the problem areas on the field are, but oftentimes seeing the monetary number, just how much they're losing, there's a little bit of sticker shock. And that's usually a pretty good way to get farmers to start considering making a change.
I have one question. When does it ever benefit you, or like, is there ever like a farmer's in their interest to consider the different profit that they could get from multiple kinds of practices? Let's say, like for that one example, CRP versus equip, depending on what they wanted to do or something like that.
Absolutely. And that goes back to presenting multiple options to the grower, because there are a lot of people who are not too keen on the idea of a 10-15-year contract, especially when they're trying something new that they're unfamiliar with. So equip is a great way to get people to dip their toes in and make a change without necessarily being locked in. For those, if there's anyone on the call who is unfamiliar with the programs, equip is basically a cost share program where you get money for the implementation cost, but then you do not get a yearly payment after that. Whereas CRP has cost share payments as well as a yearly payment for keeping that production, keeping that practice in place.
Any other questions? Don't feel shy. And if there are not, then want to go ahead and thank you again, Sarah. Oh, we also did have one announcement from Steph. Right, go ahead, Steph.
Well, yeah, actually, I was going to let Rachel Cochran make the announcement. She has a really exciting soil health tour going on right now. That is a self-guided tour. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. So Rachel, if you want to let everyone know what they can do to participate in that, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So I'm a water quality associate with Ohio State University up here in Northwest Ohio. And as Stephanie mentioned, we're partnering with TNC for the second annual soil health tour. I'll drop the link in the chat in just a minute for that. But what the tour is there's 18 self-guided stops through Northwest Ohio, Northeast Indiana, and Southeast Michigan. And this year there are 6 virtual tour stops as well, so you don't have to be in the area to join in. We're having a wrap-up event for the tour on September 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. here in Paulding County. And the tour will close the day before that on the 28th. So it'll be open for the next 8 days, and you can go to those stops whenever. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'll put my email in the chat as well. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Steph. And thank you again, Sarah.